The morning air was crisp with the promise of winter as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood by the tall windows of Windsor Castle. Frost painted delicate patterns across the glass, and, in the distance, the ground sparkled under a thin layer of December snow. She wrapped her cashmere cardigan tighter around her shoulders, watching as her 3 children played in the courtyard below. Prince George was helping his younger sister Charlotte build a snowman, while little Prince Louis ran circles around them, his laughter echoing through the quiet morning. Catherine's heart swelled with a familiar warmth that came whenever she watched her children simply being children. After the turbulent year the family had endured, these moments of pure joy felt precious beyond measure. The cancer diagnosis that had shaken her world to its core seemed like a distant storm cloud now, though its shadow still lingered in quiet moments like these. "Mummy, come see our snowman." Charlotte's voice carried up to the window, her small mittened hand waving enthusiastically. Catherine smiled and waved back, mouthing 5 minutes through the glass. She had a meeting with her private secretary about the upcoming Christmas carol service at Westminster Abbey, but nothing felt more important than the happiness radiating from her children's faces. The door to her private sitting room opened softly, and William entered carrying 2 steaming mugs of tea. His presence immediately filled the space with comfort, just as it had for over a decade of marriage. He handed her the warm mug and stood beside her at the window, his arm naturally finding its way around her waist. "They're building quite the masterpiece," he observed, nodding toward the children's increasingly elaborate snow creation. "George insisted it needed a proper crown," Catherine laughed, pointing to where their eldest son was carefully placing twigs on the snowman's head. "Very fitting for a future king." William chuckled, but Catherine noticed the way his eyes lingered on her face, still carrying that protective concern that had become second nature since her treatment began. She had finished chemotherapy months ago, and her doctors were optimistic, but William watched over her with the dedication of a man who had nearly lost everything that mattered. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" he asked quietly. "The carol service, I mean. It's going to be quite public, quite emotional." Catherine turned to face him fully, setting down her teacup. "I've never been more ready for anything," she said with quiet conviction. "This year has taught me what truly matters, William. Family, faith, hope, gratitude. This service isn't just about Christmas traditions. It's about celebrating that we're still here, still together, still able to serve others." The Christmas carol service had been Catherine's special project for several years now, but this year it held deeper meaning. She wanted to create an evening that would touch hearts and remind people of the power of love and community, especially during difficult times. The theme she had chosen was Love Actualized, the idea that love isn't just a feeling, but something that comes alive through our actions toward others. Her private secretary, Sarah, knocked gently before entering with a folder of plans. "Your Royal Highness, we have the final confirmations for next week's service. Would you like to review them?" Catherine nodded, settling into her favorite armchair while William took the seat across from her. Sarah opened the folder with the efficiency that had made her invaluable over the years. "We have confirmations from all the invited guests," Sarah began. "The service will host approximately 1,600 people, including members of the armed forces, emergency responders, and individuals who have shown extraordinary kindness in their communities this year." Catherine's eyes lit up. "Tell me about some of the community heroes we're honoring." Sarah flipped through several pages. "There's Maria Santos, a teacher from Liverpool who started a food bank that's now feeding over 300 families weekly. James Morrison, a teenager who organized mental health support groups in his school after losing his best friend. The Henderson family, who fostered 12 children this year alone." Each story touched Catherine's heart. This was exactly why the service mattered so much to her. It wasn't about pomp and ceremony, it was about recognizing the everyday angels who made the world brighter through their selfless actions. "What about the musical arrangements?" Catherine asked. "The choir from the Royal Hospital School will perform, along with several solo artists. We have a beautiful rendition of Silent Night planned, and a new composition inspired by your theme of love and action." William leaned forward. "The security briefing went well. Everything's in place for a smooth evening." Catherine nodded, though her mind was already racing ahead to the details that mattered most to her. She wanted every person who attended to feel genuinely welcomed and valued. This wasn't just a royal event, it was a celebration of the human spirit. "I'd like to personally greet as many guests as possible," she said. "Especially the children and the community heroes we're honoring." Sarah made a note. "We can arrange extended time for interactions before the service begins." After the meeting concluded and Sarah departed, Catherine and William remained in the quiet sitting room. Outside, their children had moved on from snowman building to an energetic snowball fight, with Louis somehow managing to hit targets despite being the smallest participant. "Do you remember our first Christmas after we were married?" Catherine asked, settling back into her chair. William's face softened with the memory. "You were so nervous about everything being perfect. You spent hours arranging the Christmas crackers just so. I wanted to prove I could handle royal traditions," Catherine admitted with a laugh. "I had no idea then that the most important tradition would simply be being together." This year's Christmas preparations felt different from those early days of their marriage. Catherine no longer felt the pressure to prove herself worthy of her position. The challenges she had faced had stripped away any remaining insecurities and revealed the strength she never knew she possessed. Her role as Princess of Wales wasn't about perfection, it was about authenticity, compassion, and using her platform to make a genuine difference. "The carol service this year," she continued thoughtfully, "it's my way of saying thank you. Thank you to everyone who supported our family during the difficult months. Thank you to the medical teams who took such good care of me. Thank you to the community heroes who remind us that kindness is still alive in the world." William reached across the space between their chairs and took her hand. "And thank you to my wife, who faced everything with such grace and came out stronger than ever." The afternoon passed quietly as they finalized small details for the service. Catherine insisted on handwritten thank you notes for each of the honored guests, and she spent time carefully crafting personal messages that acknowledged their specific contributions to their communities. Each note was written on elegant cream paper with the royal monogram, but the words inside were purely Catherine, warm, genuine, and heartfelt. As evening approached, the children burst through the doors, cheeks flushed red from the cold and eyes bright with excitement. "Mummy, Daddy, you have to see our snow family," George announced breathlessly. "We made a whole royal court in the garden." Catherine and William exchanged amused glances before bundling into their coats to examine the children's frozen masterpieces. Outside, they discovered an impressive collection of snow figures, each one carefully crafted with unique characteristics. There was indeed a Snow King and Queen, complete with stick crowns, and several smaller figures that Louis proudly identified as all the cousins. "This one's you, Mummy," Charlotte said, pointing to an elegant snow woman wearing what appeared to be a leafy tiara. "She's the most beautiful one." Catherine knelt down beside her daughter, pulling her into a warm hug. "Thank you, darling. I think she looks very happy." "She is happy," Louis chimed in seriously, "because her whole family is with her." The simple wisdom in her youngest son's words touched Catherine deeply. Yes, the snow woman looked happy, surrounded by her frozen family in the fading winter light. Just like Catherine felt happy, surrounded by the people she loved most in the world. That evening, after the children were tucked into bed with stories of Christmas adventures and promises of carol singing the next week, Catherine sat at her desk in the private study. Before her lay sketches and notes for the carol service, but her thoughts kept drifting to the year that was drawing to a close. 12 months ago, she never could have imagined the journey that lay ahead. The fear, the uncertainty, the moments of deep vulnerability when the future seemed frighteningly unclear. But she also couldn't have imagined the profound gratitude that would emerge from that darkness, or the way adversity would deepen her appreciation for every ordinary moment. The carol service would be her first major public appearance since completing treatment, and she knew that all eyes would be on her. But, rather than feeling daunted by the attention, she felt energized by the opportunity to share a message of hope and resilience. She wanted people to see that it was possible to face life's storms and emerge not just intact, but transformed. Her phone buzzed with a text from her brother James, saw the news about the carol service. "So proud of you, sis. Mom and Dad would be too." Catherine smiled, thinking of her parents and how much they had loved Christmas traditions. Her mother had always said that Christmas wasn't about the gifts under the tree, but about the love that surrounded it. This year, Catherine understood that wisdom more deeply than ever. She picked up her pen and began writing her opening remarks for the service, wanting to strike exactly the right tone. The words needed to be warm but not overly sentimental, hopeful but not naive about life's challenges, personal but still appropriate for such a diverse audience. "Good evening, and welcome to Westminster Abbey," she wrote. "Tonight, we gather not just to celebrate the Christmas season, but to celebrate something even more precious, the love that connects us all and the ways we make that love visible through our actions toward one another." She paused, thinking about all the people who would be sitting in those Abbey pews next week. Service members far from their families during the holidays. Healthcare workers who had dedicated their lives to caring for others. Teachers, volunteers, neighbors who had quietly made their communities better places simply by choosing kindness over indifference. Each person had a story, challenges they had faced, moments when hope seemed distant. But they had chosen to keep showing up, keep caring, keep believing that their actions mattered. That was the message Catherine wanted to celebrate, not that life was easy, but that love was powerful enough to sustain us through whatever came our way. Outside her study window, snow had begun falling again, coating the world in fresh white silence. Tomorrow would bring more preparations, more details to finalize, more excitement building toward the special evening. But tonight, Catherine felt a deep sense of peace about the path that had led her to this moment. The carol service would be beautiful, she was certain of that. But, more importantly, it would be real, a genuine celebration of the resilience of the human spirit and the countless ways people chose love over fear, hope over despair, connection over isolation. As she continued writing, Catherine found herself thinking about all the Christmas services she had attended throughout her life. From childhood memories of midnight mass with her family to the formal ceremonies she had participated in as a member of the royal family, each one had contributed to her understanding of what this season truly meant. But this year's service felt different. It wasn't just about maintaining tradition or fulfilling royal duties. It was about bearing witness to the truth that love actually did conquer all, not in some fairy tale sense, but in the very real, very practical sense that choosing love made everything bearable and meaningful, even in the darkest times. The words flowed easily now as Catherine found her rhythm. She wrote about gratitude for the everyday heroes who made the world brighter. She wrote about the importance of community and the way shared struggles could actually bring people closer together. She wrote about hope as an active choice rather than passive waiting, and about the way serving others served to heal our own hearts as well. When William found her hours later, still writing by lamplight, her desk was covered with draft after draft of remarks, song selections, and personal notes for various attendees. "How's it coming?" he asked, settling into the chair beside her desk. "Better than I hoped," Catherine replied, looking up with bright eyes. "I think I finally know exactly what I want to say." "Which is?" Catherine leaned back in her chair, gathering her thoughts. "That this year taught me the difference between surviving and thriving. Surviving is just getting through. Thriving is finding meaning and purpose and joy even in the midst of difficulty. And the key to thriving is love, both receiving it and giving it away." William nodded slowly. "That's a beautiful message." "It's not just a message," Catherine said softly. "It's what I've learned to be true. This service isn't about me sharing wisdom I think I have. It's about sharing wisdom I've been given through experience, through community, through faith, and through family." As they prepared to head upstairs for the evening, Catherine took one last look at her notes. Next week, Westminster Abbey would be filled with candlelight and music, with familiar carols and new compositions, with the faces of people who had chosen to make the world better in countless small and large ways. But the real gift of the evening wouldn't be found in the beautiful setting or the perfect performances. It would be found in the connections made between strangers, in the recognition of shared humanity, in the collective acknowledgement that love was indeed the most powerful force in the universe when it was actualized through concrete acts of kindness, service, and care. Catherine had no way of knowing that the carol service would become one of the most talked about royal events of the year, or that her appearance would be seen as a triumphant return to public life. All she knew was that she had been given a platform and an opportunity to celebrate the very best of human nature during a season dedicated to hope and new beginnings. And that felt like exactly the right way to close this chapter of her life and step confidently into whatever adventures the new year might bring. The morning of the carol service dawned with the kind of crisp winter beauty that made London look like a Christmas card. Catherine woke before her alarm, her mind already buzzing with excitement and nervous energy. Through her bedroom windows, she could see the city beginning to stir, early commuters making their way through streets that sparkled with frost. William was already up, she noticed, his side of the bed empty but still warm. She found him in the kitchen, making tea and checking his phone for any last-minute updates from their security team. The children's voices drifted down from upstairs, where their nanny was helping them get ready for what promised to be a very special day. "Good morning," Catherine said, accepting the cup of tea William offered her. "Any changes to the schedule?" "Everything's on track," he replied, though she could see the slight tension in his shoulders that always appeared before major public events. Not tension about the event itself, but the protective concern that came with knowing his wife would be in the spotlight for the first time since her treatment ended. "I'm perfectly fine," Catherine said gently, reading his expression with the ease that came from years of marriage. "Actually, I feel wonderful. More ready for this than I've felt about anything in months." And it was true. The nervous energy she felt wasn't anxiety about her health or her ability to handle the demands of the evening. It was the good kind of nervousness that came with anticipation, with knowing something meaningful was about to unfold. Charlotte appeared in the kitchen doorway wearing her favorite red dress, her hair only partially brushed despite their nanny's best efforts. "Mummy, can I sit with you during the singing? I know all the words to Silent Night now." Catherine knelt down to finish brushing her daughter's hair, marveling at how the simple ritual grounded her in the present moment. "You can sit right between Daddy and me," she promised. "And I want to hear you sing every word." The next few hours passed in a comfortable flurry of preparation. Catherine had selected her outfit weeks ago, a deep blue dress that photographed beautifully but, more importantly, felt like herself. Her stylist and hair team arrived mid-morning, transforming her private sitting room into a temporary salon. But, unlike many royal events where the preparation felt formal and distant, today felt personal. Catherine found herself sharing stories with her team about why this particular service meant so much to her, and they responded with their own tales of community kindness and Christmas traditions. By the time her makeup was complete, the room felt warm with shared anticipation. "You look absolutely radiant," her stylist said, stepping back to admire the finished result. Catherine studied her reflection in the mirror and had to agree. There was something different about her appearance today, not just the professional hair and makeup, but a light in her eyes that had been dimmed during the difficult months and was now shining brightly again. She looked like herself, but the best version of herself. She looked like a woman who had faced her fears and emerged stronger. The drive to Westminster Abbey felt surprisingly peaceful despite the bustling activity of central London. Catherine watched through the car windows as people hurried along the sidewalks, many carrying shopping bags and wearing the slightly harried but happy expressions of those deep into holiday preparations. Some stopped to wave when they recognized the royal car, and Catherine waved back, feeling genuinely connected to the city and its people. "Look, there's the Abbey," George pointed out as the magnificent building came into view. Even though he had been there many times, he never lost his sense of awe at the soaring Gothic architecture and the weight of history contained within those ancient walls. "It looks extra beautiful today," Charlotte observed, and Catherine had to agree. Someone had arranged for additional lighting that made the stone facade seem to glow against the gray December sky. As their car pulled up to the entrance, Catherine could see that crowds had already begun gathering behind the barriers. The sight of so many people who had come just to share in the evening's celebration filled her heart with gratitude. These weren't people seeking autographs or selfies, they were families and individuals who wanted to be part of something larger than themselves, something that celebrated the best of humanity during the Christmas season. Inside the Abbey, Catherine was immediately struck by how perfectly her vision had been brought to life. Thousands of candles cast a warm, golden glow throughout the ancient space. Evergreen garlands woven with white ribbons adorned the columns, and the altar area was arranged with simple but elegant Christmas displays that spoke of joy and hope rather than ostentatious wealth. "Your Royal Highness," the Dean of Westminster approached with a warm smile. "Everything is ready for this evening. The atmosphere is absolutely magical. Catherine walked slowly through the nave, taking in every detail. In just a few hours, these pews would be filled with people whose stories of kindness and service had earned them a place at this special celebration. She thought about Maria Santos, the teacher from Liverpool who would be sitting in the third row, probably still amazed that her food bank work had brought her to Westminster Abbey. She thought about young James Morrison, who might be nervous about being in such a formal setting but whose mental health advocacy had touched so many lives. The dress rehearsal went beautifully, the music director informed her as they approached the choir area. The Royal Hospital School Choir is particularly excited about performing for you. They've been preparing for months. Catherine smiled, remembering her own school choir experiences. There was something special about young voices raised in song, an innocence and pure joy that no professional performance could quite replicate. The afternoon flew by in a series of final preparations and briefings. Catherine walked through every aspect of the service, from her opening remarks to the specific moments when she would greet honored guests. But, rather than feeling overwhelmed by the details, she felt energized by each element that would contribute to the evening's message of love and action. During a quiet break, she found herself alone in the Abbey's smaller chapel, a space that had provided sanctuary for countless individuals over the centuries. She sat in one of the wooden chairs and allowed herself a moment of reflection on the journey that had brought her to this day. 6 months ago, during the most difficult period of her treatment, she had wondered if she would ever feel ready to take on public responsibilities again. The physical challenges were significant, but the emotional toll had been even greater. There were days when she questioned everything, her role, her purpose, her ability to serve others when she felt so vulnerable herself. But, gradually, as her strength returned, she began to understand that vulnerability wasn't weakness. It was connection. It was the thing that made her human and relatable and able to truly empathize with others facing their own struggles. The woman who would address the congregation tonight was different from the one who had last spoken publicly, not diminished, but deepened. "There you are," William's voice interrupted her thoughts as he entered the chapel. "The children are asking for you. They want to show you something." Catherine followed him back to the main area of the Abbey, where she found George, Charlotte, and Louis standing near the altar with the choir director. Charlotte was practically bouncing with excitement. "Mummy, we learned a special surprise for tonight," she announced. "We know the Harmony for Silent Night and we're going to sing it during the service." Catherine's heart melted. Her children's faces were glowing with pride at their secret preparation, and she realized this was exactly what the evening was supposed to be about: families coming together, everyone contributing what they could to create something beautiful. "That's wonderful," she said, kneeling down to their level. "I can't wait to hear it." As the afternoon transitioned toward evening, Westminster Abbey began to fill with guests. Catherine positioned herself in the entrance area, wanting to personally welcome as many attendees as possible. This was the part of the evening she had been most looking forward to, the chance to connect individually with people whose stories had inspired the entire service. Maria Santos arrived with her husband and teenage daughter, looking slightly overwhelmed by the grandeur of their surroundings. When Catherine approached to greet them, Maria's eyes filled with tears. "Your Royal Highness, I can't believe I'm here," she said. "When they told me about the invitation, I thought someone was playing a joke." "Your work feeding families in your community is no joke," Catherine replied warmly. "It's exactly the kind of love and action we're celebrating tonight. Thank you for everything you do." As Maria's family found their seats, Catherine could see them whispering excitedly to each other, still processing the reality of where they were. This was why the evening mattered, not because it was a royal event, but because it recognized ordinary people doing extraordinary things. James Morrison arrived with his mother, a quiet teenager who looked simultaneously nervous and determined. When Catherine shook his hand, she could feel him trembling slightly. "I heard about your mental health advocacy work," she told him. "Starting those support groups took real courage. How many students are participating now?" "About 40 across 3 schools," he replied, his voice growing stronger as he talked about something he was passionate about. "We're trying to make it okay to talk about feeling sad or scared or confused. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone makes all the difference." Catherine nodded, thinking about her own recent experience with feeling scared and confused. You're absolutely right. Community and connection are powerful healers. One by one, she greeted the community heroes, the service members, the healthcare workers, the teachers and volunteers and neighbors who had been selected to attend. Each interaction reminded her why she had chosen public service as her life's work. These were the people who made society function, who chose kindness over indifference, who believed that their actions mattered even when no one was watching. As the last guests found their seats, Catherine took a moment to look out over the assembled crowd. The abbey was full but not packed, creating an atmosphere of intimacy despite the grandeur of the setting. Candlelight flickered across faces young and old, reflecting anticipation and joy and a sense of shared purpose. The choir took their positions, their red robes a splash of color against the ancient stone. Catherine could see her own children in the front row, Charlotte sitting up very straight with the importance of her secret role in the evening's performance. William caught her eye and gave her an encouraging nod. The Dean of Westminster approached the lectern to offer the opening welcome, and Catherine felt her heart rate increase with anticipation. In just a few minutes, she would address this remarkable gathering with words she had crafted to honor their stories and celebrate their contributions. But first, the service would begin with music, the universal language that connected hearts across all barriers of age, background, and experience. The opening hymn was "O Come, All Ye Faithful," chosen because it invited everyone to participate regardless of their musical ability or familiarity with formal worship. As the first notes filled the abbey, Catherine felt a wave of emotion wash over her. All those months of uncertainty and fear seemed to dissolve in the face of this moment. Hundreds of voices joined in celebration, her children's faces bright with joy, William's steady presence beside her, and the knowledge that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The hymn concluded, and the dean began the formal welcome to the service. Catherine listened to his words about the importance of recognizing everyday heroes and celebrating love in action, but part of her mind was already focused on her upcoming remarks. She had memorized her speech, but, more importantly, she had internalized its message. Tonight wasn't about delivering perfect words or maintaining royal protocol. It was about speaking from the heart to people whose own hearts had been opened by service to others. When the dean introduced her, Catherine rose from her seat with confidence and grace. The walk to the lectern felt both eternal and instantaneous, and, as she looked out over the congregation, she felt a sense of complete clarity about what she wanted to say. "Good evening," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the abbey's perfect acoustics. "And welcome to this very special celebration of Christmas and community." She paused, letting her eyes move across the faces in the pews, making the kind of individual connections that transformed a crowd into a gathering of friends. "Tonight, we are here not just to observe the Christmas season, but to celebrate something even more precious, the countless ways that love becomes real through our actions toward one another." As she continued speaking, Catherine could feel the attention and engagement of her audience. These weren't people listening out of politeness or obligation, they were people hungry for a message of hope and recognition, and she was honored to be the one delivering it. She spoke about the teacher who started a food bank, the teenager who created mental health support groups, the family who opened their home to children in need. She spoke about the service members who protected communities far from their own families, the healthcare workers who chose healing as their life's calling, the countless volunteers who made their neighborhoods better simply by showing up. Each story she shared drew nods of recognition and understanding from the congregation. These people knew the challenges and rewards of service. They understood that choosing to help others was sometimes difficult but always meaningful. "What all of you have in common," Catherine continued, "is the understanding that love isn't just a feeling we experience, but a force we unleash in the world through our choices and our actions. You have made love real for the people you serve, and tonight, we celebrate that beautiful truth." The response was immediate and heartfelt, not just polite applause, but the kind of appreciation that came from feeling truly seen and valued. Catherine could see Maria Santos wiping away tears, and James Morrison sitting up straighter with pride and confidence. As she concluded her remarks and returned to her seat, Catherine felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had said exactly what she hoped to say, and, more importantly, her words had connected with their intended audience. The evening was off to a perfect start. The service continued with a beautiful blend of traditional carols and contemporary compositions, each one chosen to reinforce the theme of love in action. When the Royal Hospital School Choir performed, their young voices filled the abbey with pure, clear notes that seemed to elevate everyone present. And then came the moment Catherine had been looking forward to most: Silent Night with her children's secret harmony. As the familiar melody began, Charlotte, George, and Louis joined in with carefully practiced parts that added depth and richness to the beloved carol. Catherine found herself fighting back tears as she listened to her children sing, not because she was sad, but because the moment perfectly captured everything the evening represented. Family, tradition, service, hope, and love all woven together in one perfect moment of harmony. As the carol concluded and the evening moved toward its close, Catherine looked around the abbey one more time, memorizing the faces and the feeling and the sense of completion that filled her heart. This was what she had been called to do, not just to wear the title of Princess of Wales, but to use that platform to celebrate and encourage the very best of human nature. The evening wasn't over yet, but already Catherine knew it would be remembered as more than just a successful royal event. It would be remembered as a night when love truly was actualized, when ordinary people felt extraordinary, and when the power of community and kindness was celebrated in one of the world's most magnificent settings. As the final blessing was offered and guests began to prepare for the reception that would follow, Catherine felt profoundly grateful, not just for her recovery, not just for her family, but for the opportunity to use her voice and her position to shine a light on the everyday angels who made the world brighter simply by choosing love over fear, hope over despair, and service over self-interest. As the formal carol service concluded and guests began moving toward the abbey's reception area, Catherine felt a profound sense of fulfillment washing over her. The evening had exceeded even her highest hopes, but the most meaningful part was just beginning: the chance to spend genuine time with the people who had inspired the entire celebration. The reception was held in the abbey's chapter house, a magnificent circular room with soaring windows and ancient stone walls that had witnessed centuries of important gatherings. Tonight, it was transformed into a warm, welcoming space where community heroes could mingle with members of the royal family over tea, wine, and carefully prepared refreshments. Catherine moved through the crowd with genuine enthusiasm, no longer bound by the formal structure of the service but free to engage in real conversations with the extraordinary individuals she had chosen to honor. This was always her favorite part of any royal engagement: the moments when protocol could be relaxed and authentic connections could be made. She found Maria Santos near one of the tall windows, still looking slightly overwhelmed by the grandeur of her surroundings. Maria was speaking quietly with her teenage daughter, who was taking photos with an expression of pure wonder. "Mrs. Santos," Catherine approached with a warm smile, "I hope you're enjoying the evening. How did it feel to hear your work celebrated in such a beautiful setting?" Maria's eyes immediately filled with tears again. "Your Royal Highness, I keep thinking this must be a dream. When I started the food bank, I was just trying to help a few families in our neighborhood who were struggling. I never imagined anyone would notice, let alone." She gestured around at the magnificent surroundings. "But that's exactly why your work is so important," Catherine replied earnestly. "You saw a need in your community and you responded with love and action. You didn't wait for someone else to solve the problem or for perfect conditions. You just started helping people, and look how it's grown." Maria nodded, her composure returning as she talked about something she was passionate about. "We're feeding over 300 families now, and we've started a clothing bank too. Other teachers at my school have gotten involved, and some of the older students volunteer after classes. It's become bigger than anything I could have managed alone." "That's the beautiful thing about love in action," Catherine observed. "It's contagious. One person's kindness inspires others, and suddenly, a small gesture becomes a movement that changes an entire community." As they talked, Catherine learned more about Maria's personal story: how she had started teaching in one of Liverpool's most challenging neighborhoods because she believed every child deserved excellent education, how she had noticed that some of her students were coming to school hungry, how she had begun quietly providing snacks that eventually grew into a full food distribution program. "I grew up in a family that didn't have much money," Maria shared. "I remember what it felt like to be hungry, to be embarrassed about not having the same things as other kids. When I became a teacher, I promised myself I would never let a child in my classroom feel that way if I could help it." Catherine found herself deeply moved by Maria's story, but also inspired by it. Here was someone who had transformed her own difficult experiences into compassion for others, who had chosen to be part of the solution rather than remaining bitter about past hardships. Across the room, she spotted James Morrison standing somewhat awkwardly near the refreshment table, clearly still overwhelmed by the formal setting. His mother stood protectively nearby, but Catherine could see that James was slowly beginning to relax as other guests engaged him in conversation about his mental health advocacy work. "Excuse me for just a moment," Catherine said to Maria. "I want to check on our young mental health champion." She made her way across the room, pausing to greet other guests along the way. The atmosphere in the chapter house was unlike any formal royal reception she had ever attended. People weren't standing in rigid receiving lines or speaking in hushed, reverential tones. Instead, the space buzzed with genuine conversation as community heroes shared their stories with each other and discovered common ground in their shared commitment to service. "James," Catherine approached the teenager with a smile, "how are you finding the evening? I know this setting can feel quite overwhelming." James straightened up, some of his nervousness returning now that he was speaking directly with the Princess of Wales. "It's incredible, Your Royal Highness. I keep thinking about all the history that's happened in this building, and now I'm here because of something I started in my school cafeteria." "Tell me more about how the support groups began," Catherine encouraged, genuinely curious about his story. James's face lit up as he began describing his work. "It started after my best friend died by suicide last year. He had been struggling for months, but he never told anyone how bad it was. After the funeral, I kept thinking about how many other kids might be feeling the same way but afraid to ask for help." Catherine felt her heart clench with sympathy for this young man who had transformed personal tragedy into a mission to help others. "That must have been incredibly difficult. How did you find the strength to channel your grief into helping others?" "My mom," James glanced toward his mother with obvious affection. "She told me that the best way to honor my friend's memory was to make sure other kids didn't have to face their struggles alone. So I started talking to my teachers about setting up a place where students could come together and share what they were going through." The conversation continued as James described the challenges and rewards of his advocacy work. He talked about the resistance he had initially encountered from some school administrators who worried about liability issues, and the persistence it had taken to convince them that peer support groups could be a valuable complement to professional mental health resources. "We meet twice a week now," he explained. "It's not therapy, we're just kids talking to other kids about stuff that's hard. But sometimes that's exactly what someone needs. Just knowing they're not the only one who feels scared or sad or confused about the future." Catherine was struck by James's maturity and insight. At 16, he had already learned one of life's most important lessons, that shared struggles could become sources of strength when approached with openness and compassion. "Have you thought about expanding the program to other schools?" she asked. James nodded enthusiastically. "That's actually my goal for next year. We've had inquiries from 3 other schools in our area, and I'm working with a local mental health charity to develop training materials so other students can start similar groups." As they talked, Catherine noticed that several other guests had drifted over to listen to James's story. There was something magnetic about his combination of vulnerability and determination that drew people in and made them want to support his mission. The evening continued with dozens of similar conversations as Catherine moved through the reception, learning about the personal journeys that had led each honored guest to their work in service of others. She met a nurse who had started a program providing free health screenings in rural communities, a veteran who had created a support network for other former service members struggling with PTSD, a grandmother who had turned her small apartment into an after-school tutoring center for neighborhood children. Each story reinforced Catherine's belief that real change happened not through grand gestures or government programs, but through individuals who saw problems in their communities and decided to take action. These were people who didn't wait for permission or perfect conditions, they simply started doing what needed to be done. During a brief quiet moment, Catherine found herself standing near the ancient windows of the chapter house, looking out at the lights of London twinkling in the winter darkness. The contrast between the medieval setting and the modern city beyond seemed to underscore the timeless nature of what they were celebrating, the human capacity for kindness that transcended any particular era or circumstance. William appeared beside her, carrying 2 glasses of wine. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, offering her one of the glasses. I was just thinking about how remarkable this all is, Catherine replied, accepting the wine gratefully. Not the setting or the ceremony, but the people. Every single person we're honoring tonight could have chosen differently. They could have focused only on their own lives and problems. Instead, they chose to care about others, to take responsibility for making their communities better. William nodded, following her gaze out toward the city. It's humbling, isn't it? All the resources and platforms we have access to, and sometimes I wonder if we make half the difference that Maria Santos makes with her food bank or James Morrison makes with his support groups. But that's exactly why tonight matters, Catherine said thoughtfully. We can use our platform to shine a light on their work, to show the world that these kinds of contributions are worthy of celebration and recognition. Maybe someone watching the news coverage tonight will be inspired to start their own food bank or support group. Their conversation was interrupted by Charlotte, who appeared at Catherine's side with chocolate on her fingers and excitement in her eyes. Mummy, did you know that lady over there teaches children who can't hear very well? Charlotte pointed toward a woman who was engaged in animated sign language conversation with several other guests. She's teaching me how to say thank you with my hands. Catherine watched with delight as Charlotte carefully formed the sign language gesture she had just learned. This was exactly what she had hoped would happen, that the evening would be educational and inspiring for her own children as well as the other attendees. That's wonderful, darling. Did you learn anything else? The man with the uniform told me about how he helps people when their houses catch fire, Charlotte continued enthusiastically. And the nice lady in the blue dress helps animals that are sick. There are so many people here who help other people and animals. It makes me want to help too. Catherine's heart swelled with pride and satisfaction. If nothing else came from the evening, knowing that her children were learning these lessons about service and compassion made all the effort worthwhile. As the reception continued, Catherine noticed something beautiful happening organically throughout the room. The honored guests weren't just speaking with members of the royal family, they were connecting with each other, sharing ideas and experiences, forming networks that would likely continue long after the evening ended. She watched Maria Santos deep in conversation with the grandmother who ran the tutoring program, both women exchanging contact information and discussing ways their organizations might collaborate. James Morrison was speaking intently with several adult guests who seemed fascinated by his approach to peer mental health support. This was the unexpected gift of bringing together people united by a common commitment to service. They naturally found ways to learn from and support each other's work. The evening was creating new connections and partnerships that could multiply the impact of everyone's individual efforts. The Dean of Westminster approached Catherine with a warm smile. Your Royal Highness, I wanted to thank you for bringing such extraordinary people into our abbey tonight. The conversations I've been overhearing are inspiring beyond measure. It's been perfect, Catherine replied sincerely. Exactly what I had hoped for and more. These people deserve to be celebrated, and they deserve to connect with each other. As the formal reception began winding down, Catherine took one last opportunity to address the assembled guests. She had prepared remarks for this moment, but looking out at the faces of people who had become so much more than honored attendees over the course of the evening, she decided to speak from the heart instead. Before you return to your homes and your important work, she began, her voice carrying easily through the circular room, I want to thank you not just for attending tonight, but for the daily choices you make to serve others. The room quieted as people turned their attention to her words. This evening began as my way of saying thank you for the inspiration you provide and the difference you make in your communities. But it has become something even more valuable, a reminder that we are not alone in our desire to make the world better. Look around this room at the faces of people who share your values and your commitment. Remember that what you do matters, that you are part of something larger than any individual effort. She paused, making eye contact with as many guests as possible. When you return to Liverpool, to your schools, to your fire stations and hospitals and neighborhood centers, know that you carry with you not just recognition for what you have already accomplished, but encouragement to continue. Know that there are hundreds of other people doing similar work in their own communities, and that together, you are changing the world one act of kindness at a time. The applause that followed was sustained and heartfelt, but Catherine could see in people's faces that her words had achieved their intended effect. These guests weren't just leaving with nice memories of a fancy evening, they were leaving with renewed energy for their missions and expanded networks of support. As guests began to collect coats and prepare for their journeys home, many stopped to thank Catherine personally. Some shared final thoughts about their work, others simply expressed gratitude for feeling valued and recognized. Each interaction reinforced her belief that the evening had achieved its goals and more. Maria Santos approached for a final goodbye, her earlier nervousness completely replaced by confidence and joy. "Your Royal Highness, this has been the most meaningful evening of my life," she said. "Not because of the beautiful setting or the honor of meeting you, but because of the reminder that what we do in our small corners of the world really does matter." "It absolutely does," Catherine replied warmly. "And now you have connections with people doing similar work. I have a feeling this evening is just the beginning of even greater things for all of you." As the last guests departed and the chapter house began returning to its usual quiet dignity, Catherine felt a deep sense of accomplishment and gratitude. The evening had been everything she had envisioned and more, a genuine celebration of human kindness, a networking opportunity for community servants, and a reminder to everyone present that love truly became powerful when it was actualized through action. Looking around the now empty room where so many meaningful connections had been made, Catherine knew that this evening would continue to bear fruit long after the candles were extinguished and the decorations removed. Seeds had been planted, relationships had been formed, and inspiration had been shared in ways that would ripple outward into countless communities. The formal events were complete, but Catherine suspected that the real impact of the evening was just beginning to unfold. The days following the carol service passed in a warm glow of fulfillment and reflection. Catherine woke each morning with a sense of lightness she hadn't experienced in over a year, as if the evening at Westminster Abbey had marked not just a successful public appearance, but a true turning point in her journey back to full engagement with life and duty. The media response had been overwhelmingly positive, but what touched Catherine most deeply were the personal messages that began arriving from guests who had attended the service. Handwritten letters, emails, and even social media posts shared how the evening had affected them and their work in ways she never could have anticipated. Maria Santos sent a photograph of her food bank's latest distribution day, with a note explaining that 3 new volunteers had joined after hearing about her recognition at the carol service. "People in our community are saying that if the Princess of Wales thinks this work matters, maybe they should get involved too," she wrote. "You've given us something we never expected, credibility and visibility that's helping us reach even more families." James Morrison's message came through his school's official email, describing how the mental health support groups had gained official recognition from the local education authority after his appearance at the Abbey. "They want to use our model as a template for other schools in the district," he shared. "I never imagined that one evening could lead to helping so many more young people." These responses filled Catherine with a profound sense of purpose. The carol service hadn't just been a beautiful event, it had become a catalyst for expanded impact in communities across the country. By shining a light on these everyday heroes, she had helped amplify their voices and extend their reach in ways that would benefit countless people. William found her reading through the messages one morning over breakfast, tears of joy gathering in her eyes. "Good news?" he asked, settling beside her with his coffee. "The best news," she replied, sharing some of the letters and emails. "Look at this, the grandmother who runs the tutoring program has been contacted by 2 other women who want to start similar programs in their neighborhoods. And this veteran with the PTSD support network has been invited to speak at 3 other military bases." William read through the messages with growing amazement. "It's like you created a ripple effect that keeps expanding." "That's exactly what it feels like," Catherine agreed. "I knew the evening would be meaningful for the people who attended, but I never imagined it would have such practical, lasting impact on their work." The children, now back to their normal routines after the excitement of the carol service, had their own reactions to the evening's success. Charlotte had been telling everyone at school about the helpers she had met, and had announced to her teacher that she wanted to start a club to help animals because that's what princesses do, they help others. George, with the seriousness that often characterized his approach to royal duties, had asked thoughtful questions about how the service was organized and what made it different from other royal events. Catherine realized he was already beginning to understand the distinction between ceremonial obligations and opportunities for genuine impact. Even little Louis had been affected, though his response was typically more immediate and physical. He had started helping around the house with exaggerated enthusiasm, insisting on carrying grocery bags that were almost as big as he was and announcing his assistance with great pride. A week after the service, Catherine received an unexpected phone call that would prove to be one of the most meaningful responses to the evening. Her private secretary knocked on her study door with an unusual expression of excitement. "Your Royal Highness, there's someone on the phone who specifically asked to speak with you about the carol service. She says her name is Eleanor Mitchell, and she's calling from Edinburgh." Catherine took the call, curious about who would have reached out so directly. "Your Royal Highness," came a warm Scottish voice, "I hope you don't mind the intrusion, but I felt I had to call. I watched the coverage of your carol service on television, and it inspired me to finally do something I've been thinking about for years." Eleanor went on to explain that she was a retired social worker who had long dreamed of starting a program to pair elderly residents of care homes with local schoolchildren for regular visits and activities. The story of the evening's honored guests had given her the courage to stop planning and start acting. "I contacted 3 care homes and 2 primary schools yesterday," Eleanor continued. "Every single one was interested. We're having our first meeting next week to set up what we're calling the Generations Project. If an exhausted teacher in Liverpool can start a food bank that feeds hundreds of families, surely I can help lonely elderly people and busy children find some joy in each other's company." Catherine was deeply moved by Eleanor's story, but even more by the realization that the evening's impact was spreading far beyond the people who had actually attended. The media coverage and the message of love and action were inspiring people she would never meet to take action in their own communities. "Eleanor, that sounds like a wonderful project," Catherine said warmly. "Please keep me informed about how it develops. I'd love to hear about your progress." This conversation led Catherine to an idea that would extend the evening's impact even further. She decided to create a simple way for people inspired by the carol service to connect with each other and share their own community service initiatives. Working with her communications team, she developed a social media campaign using the hashtag #LoveActualized, encouraging people to share photos and stories of their own acts of kindness and community service. The response exceeded all expectations as hundreds, then thousands of people began sharing their volunteering efforts, charitable projects, and simple acts of neighborly kindness. The campaign took on a life of its own as people began connecting with others in their areas who shared similar interests in community service. Local Facebook groups formed around specific causes, new volunteer organizations emerged, and existing charities reported significant increases in both volunteers and donations. Catherine followed the campaign's progress with fascination and delight. A simple evening celebrating community heroes had somehow sparked a broader movement of people inspired to examine their own capacity for service and to take action in their own neighborhoods. 3 weeks after the carol service, Catherine received an invitation that surprised and deeply pleased her. Maria Santos wrote to invite her to visit the Liverpool Food Bank and see the expansion that had resulted from the recognition she received at the Abbey. "We've moved to a larger space and doubled our volunteer team," Maria's letter explained. "But, more importantly, we've started a cooking program where families can learn to prepare healthy meals together, and a job training program to help people develop skills that might lead to better employment. We'd be honored if you could see what your evening of recognition has helped us accomplish." Catherine immediately accepted the invitation, recognizing it as an opportunity to see firsthand how the carol service was continuing to bear fruit in real people's lives. The visit was scheduled for early January, giving her something meaningful to look forward to as the Christmas season drew to a close. On Christmas Eve, as the royal family gathered for their traditional celebration at Sandringham, Catherine found herself reflecting on the year that was ending. 12 months earlier, she had been facing the greatest health challenge of her life, uncertain about the future and struggling to maintain hope during the darkest moments of her treatment. Now, as she watched her children excitedly preparing for Father Christmas's arrival and felt the warmth of family traditions surrounding her, she marveled at the journey she had traveled. The woman who sat by the Christmas tree that evening was not the same woman who had received her diagnosis almost a year earlier. She had been changed by the experience, made more compassionate, more aware of life's fragility and preciousness, more committed to using her position to make a meaningful difference. "What are you thinking about?" William asked quietly, settling beside her as the children continued their excited Christmas Eve preparations. "I was thinking about how much has changed," Catherine replied. "Not just in our family, but in my understanding of what really matters. The carol service showed me that my role isn't about wearing beautiful clothes to formal events or cutting ribbons at building openings. It's about using whatever platform I have to celebrate and encourage the best in people." William nodded thoughtfully. "The response to the evening has been incredible. I've never seen a royal event generate so much practical, positive action." "Because it wasn't really about us," Catherine observed. "It was about recognizing people who were already doing important work and giving them a bigger stage to inspire others. All we did was provide the spotlight." As Christmas Day dawned bright and cold, Catherine felt a deep sense of gratitude for the year's journey. The challenges had been real and significant, but they had led to a deeper understanding of her purpose and a clearer vision of how she wanted to serve others. The family's Christmas morning was filled with the beautiful chaos of children opening presents, sharing excitement over new toys and books, and reveling in the magical atmosphere that parents work so hard to create. But Catherine found equal joy in the quieter moments, Charlotte carefully helping Louis open a difficult package, George sharing his new puzzle with his sister, William catching her eye across the room with a look of complete contentment. After the initial excitement of present opening had settled, the family sat down to a breakfast that had become one of their most cherished traditions. As they shared stories and laughter around the table, Catherine felt moved to express something that had been growing in her heart throughout the Christmas season. "I want to tell you all something," she said, her voice drawing the attention of her family. "This year has taught me that the most important gifts aren't the ones we unwrap. They're the ones we give to each other every day, our time, our attention, our love, and our commitment to being there for each other no matter what challenges we face." The children listened with the seriousness they always brought to moments when their parents shared important thoughts. "The carol service showed me that there are people everywhere who understand this truth," Catherine continued. "People who give their time to help others, who choose kindness over selfishness, who work to make their communities better places. And, you know what the beautiful thing is? Every one of us can choose to be one of those people." Charlotte raised her hand as if she were in school. "Mummy, can I help with your next helping party?" Catherine laughed at her daughter's term for the carol service. "Of course you can, darling. In fact, I think our whole family should be involved in helping others. What do you think, boys?" George and Louis both nodded enthusiastically, already imagining the adventures that might await them in serving their community. As the day continued with traditional Christmas activities, a long walk on the estate grounds, games with visiting family members, a festive dinner with multiple generations gathered around the table, Catherine found herself storing up mental images of every precious moment. This Christmas felt different from any they had celebrated before, not because of external circumstances but because of internal transformation. The year's challenges had stripped away everything superficial and revealed what truly mattered. Family, health, service, love, faith, hope, these weren't just concepts anymore, but lived realities that shaped every day and every decision. Later that evening, after the children had been tucked into bed with heads full of Christmas magic and hearts full of family love, Catherine and William stepped outside into the crisp winter air. The grounds of Sandringham stretched out before them, peaceful under a star-filled sky. "What's next?" William asked, referring not just to upcoming engagements but to the broader direction of their service and impact. "More of this," Catherine replied, gesturing not toward the grand estate around them but toward the house where their children slept and where family love had been celebrated all day. "More focus on what really matters. More opportunities to spotlight people who are making a difference. More ways to use our position to encourage the best in others." She paused, thinking about Maria Santos's food bank, James Morrison's support groups, Eleanor Mitchell's Generations Project, and all the other initiatives that had sprouted from the simple act of recognizing and celebrating community service. "I want to spend the rest of my life proving that love actually can be actualized," she concluded. "Not just in grand gestures or formal ceremonies, but in daily choices to see the best in people, to support their efforts to help others, and to use whatever influence we have to make kindness and service the values our society celebrates most." As they headed back inside, Catherine felt a profound sense of peace about the path ahead. The year had tested her strength, challenged her assumptions, and, ultimately revealed reserves of purpose and determination she hadn't known she possessed. The carol service had been beautiful, but it was only the beginning. Every day ahead offered new opportunities to actualize love through action, to celebrate the everyday heroes who made communities stronger, and to model for her children what it meant to use privilege and position in service of something larger than oneself. The Christmas season was ending, but Catherine's mission was just beginning. She had found her voice, her purpose, and her path forward. And she couldn't wait to see what love actualized would accomplish in the year ahead. Standing in the warmth of Sandringham's entrance hall, surrounded by the evidence of a perfect Christmas day and filled with anticipation for the service opportunities that awaited, Catherine felt profoundly grateful for the journey that had brought her to this moment of clarity and commitment. The carol service had been her return to public life, but, more importantly, it had been her declaration of what that public life would represent going forward. Love actualized. Service celebrated. Community heroes recognized and supported. It was, she realized, exactly the legacy she wanted to build and the gift she wanted to give to the world.